American English, American English. Teach and learn American English.
Hi, and welcome to Teaching Tips from American English. These short professional development videos share current practical knowledge and classroom ideas for EFL teachers around the globe. In part 2 of this teaching tip topic, Jeff Kuhn will show you how to make podcasts with your English learners while also examining some best practices for creating podcasts. Welcome back, Jeff.
Hi, Amy. Thanks everyone for joining me. Once again, my name is Jeff, and if you didn't see our last video where we learned about what podcasts are and where to find them, please, go check that out, because in today's podcast we are talking about in today's presentation, we were talking about making podcasts, which can be a lot of fun with just a little bit of practice. So our goal for today is to discover ways to create podcasts, some good tools that we can find online, download to our computer and use to create podcasts. And then let's talk about discussing best practices for making podcasts, because as students become involved in the creation process, we want to give them some structure and some guidance on how to make the best possible podcasts. Now, my recommendation for making podcasts is the software Audacity. Audacity is released under a Creative Commons philosophy, and it's free to download, and it's free to use, and it can be installed on PCs, Mac, or even on Linux. Now, before we dive into Audacity, let's listen to a student sample, and this is a podcast from one of my classes. It's a student of mine who is talking about her favorite movie. So let's listen to Tanya's podcast example.
Good evening and welcome to Movie Mania. I am your host Tanya, and today we are discussing The Notebook, a story of never-ending love that makes me cry every time I watch it. There is so much to love about this movie, so let's start with the actors.
Now, using Tanya's example there that we just listened to, let's learn how to use Audacity. Now, with Audacity, you can open many types of audio files, and this allows them to be edited or altered for a variety of purposes. In our case, educational purposes. More importantly, we can record our own audio files. So what you're seeing here, that's Tanya's podcast. That's the sample we just listened to, and those blue lines there that's her voice. So it's a visual representation of her sound that she made as she was speaking. Now, we can get this real close look here at Tanya's podcast opened up in Audacity. And so you can see it allows us to kind of record and play back. And so let's walk through the functions of Audacity, because it has some functions that we really need to know. Now, master these functions and you can record almost anything you need. The first one is recording. These buttons are the same as you would see on a CD player, for instance. So we have pause and play and stop, rewind, forward, and record. So you can open up Audacity. When you're ready to record, you just hit that little red circle, start talking, and Audacity captures that audio. Next, we have what are called the interface tools. And these tools allow you to manipulate the audio file. So using these tools, you can select portions of the file, and you can edit, cut, add, delete, all sorts of things. So it's a lot like other pieces of software, for instance, Microsoft Word. So if you can use the selector tools in Microsoft Word, you can use them in Audacity. Finally, we have the menu system. Now, this might look a little bit different depending on if you use a Mac or a PC, but in Audacity it's pretty much the same. This system is similar to most others that you would find in software and allows you to save and export the audio, but most importantly, it allows us to create effects and generate things inside of the audio. So we have the generate and effect functions there that could, for instance, let us slow down the audio or speed it up. We can do things like add silence, we can cut things, so it gives us a lot of great flexibility. So again, from the very beginning, all we really have to do is hit the record button, and Audacity will take care of the rest. But as you get better with Audacity, you can really make a very sophisticated audio recording. The majority of the screen is filled with the audio recording, in this case, Tanya's podcast example there. So you can see the blue waves there, as I mentioned, are her voice. But Audacity does more than just record your voice. So it can create these layered tracks that can allow for voice and music at the same time. So if I begin a second recording, I can create a second piece of audio for my podcasts. This allows us to create these layers. So for example, you can see up at the top, that's my voice. Down at the bottom, that's music. And they can be played simultaneously. Using those generate and effect functions up at the top, I can make the music quieter or louder, depending on if I want my audience to listen to the music or listen to my voice. And so that gives us a chance to kind of really make a nice, structured, and engaging piece of audio. Now, podcasts, they have a form, they have a structure, a genre, so to speak. And we really want to think about that when we start making podcasts, because podcasts have a written description. So they sort of introduce the listener to what the topic is before I even listen. So a little blurb on a website, for instance, that tells me today's topic. And of course, the audio itself has an introduction. So we have a little bit of listening where the host introduces the topic and sort of maybe covers what's relevant. They have some theme music that allows the listener to sort of transition out from the intro into the main idea. And of course, they focus on a very specific topic. The job of the host is to keep the podcast on topic. And of course, one of the things about podcasts is it's not just a speaking activity. This is an audio journal where we just sort of talk, and if I don't really talk at an engaging pace, people won't listen. We have to be engaging and use our voice as a tool to get people engaged. So it's really important that our students say it well. So if you assign students to create podcasts, it's important to stress to them that the goal is not to speak, but communicate. By this, I mean they should articulate and plan what they want to say. It also encourages them to speak around 150 words a minute. Now that's the standard speaking speed for radio broadcasts and presentations. Too slow and the listener may grow bored. Too fast, they struggle with the conversation. So we want to make sure our students get that practice of timing it out. Now, of course, if we're going to make students record something, they have to have something to say. So when assigning podcasts, we really want to give students the freedom to choose the material that they would like to cover, or allow them to choose from a wide list of topics. Now this is really important because it gives them autonomy. And if we look at the characteristics of autonomy, there's these components that basically allow for choice and allow for self-selection. For instance, students can choose the instructional materials, they can set learning objectives and prioritize them. They can even evaluate the learning program and decide how is it helping them. And of course, they also can measure their own progress and achievements. And what's nice about these sort of project-based tasks that we have students do is it encourages what we call the 21st century skills, which is skills and strategies students need to be engaged in a more digital workplace, but it really comes down to having students who are creative and innovative, who can communicate and collaborate, who can research information. And so that's what podcasts can really do. So students need to plan ahead. That requires they research information and turn that into a script or interview questions. Once the audio is recorded, they have to edit the audio, such as adding music or adding their introduction or conclusion. So they have to understand how to use software and create things. And of course, they need to learn to be able to be conversational. They need to learn to communicate, so they're not speaking too fast or too slow, and the questions are focused and interesting. So all these are skills that they can learn along the way that may not be explicitly language related, but they are skills that students may need in combination with their language. After all, 21st century skills, they're geared towards students being competitive in a globalized workplace. Part of that is English related, part of that is skills related. So how can we combine those in the classroom? Now, we talked about creating podcasts and best practices for podcasts, but if you're new to podcasts, be sure to check out the first video where we look at what podcasts are and where to find them. So definitely check out video number 1 if you haven't already. And try out Audacity, try making some podcasts, and have fun in the classroom. Thanks for joining me today. It was great talking about podcasts, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing some stuff down in the YouTube comments about podcasts and what you're making. And so I'm looking forward to it. And if you missed part 1 of this series, definitely check out Podcasting for the Classroom.
To check out other great teaching tip videos, be sure to subscribe to our American English YouTube channel. You can find resources for teachers on the American English website by clicking on the link listed here. And if you haven't already, be sure to like us on the American English for Educators Facebook page.